Hello.
Good evening, friends and family, and thank you for coming to another night with Behind Black Business, sponsored by our organization, Repair, Restore, and Grow Black Communities. And tonight we have another special guest, and she's not new to our podcast, Rosita Chatonda. Am I saying your name correctly,
Chatonda.
Rosita?
You have it.
Chatonda, that's
It's
right.
just not the art. Chatonda.
Another, okay. Well, Rosita is here, and many of you may already know Rosita because Rosita has been out here in the forefront fighting for education, fighting for our Black teachers, here in Chicago and on a national level, because this is a nationwide problem that we're having. And so I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, Rosita, to come and talk with us tonight.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes. Thank you for having me. Thank you for allowing this opportunity. Black media is so important to our story, and it's wonderful to, just be welcome on so that we can get our
Abs-
message out.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as you know, we are an organization who is working to, we came together to try and see what we could do to make some improvement in our community. You know,
Exactly.
in order to have a community, this is a place where you live, it's a place where you work, it's a place where you educate your children, it's a place where you build and you grow old, you know, and
Tell me about it.
you live your life. That's what a community is supposed to be about. And it just seems like in the Black communities here in Chicago and throughout our country is always effort to destabilize our communities and make it difficult for us to get some grounding.
It is.
There's always something thrown in our community, whether it's drugs, breaking up the family. We just had have this conversation over and over and over again. I guess this has been going on for 400 years here in America,
Yes.
that we have to suffer through this. But it's a few of us, we got together and said, what can we do to help? And we felt that one of the best ways to help was to support our Black businesses. Our Black businesses and our schools are the backbone of
Hmm.
our communities. And so we had an onslaught with our Black businesses, and they're struggling. And the best way for them to survive is that we support them.
Hmm.
They serve as role models
Exactly.
for us, those inspiring entrepreneurs and our children. They give back to our community in so many ways. And many of our Black businesses, the owners, they live in our communities, and they have a vested interest in the community itself. And so it has an opportunity to help circulate the dollar in our community. We've heard stories over and over again about how the dollar circulates, how many times it circulates, or how many times it doesn't circulate in our community, and how many times it does circulate in other communities. And the disparity is just
It
ridiculous.
is. And one of the things, and which is so important for Black teachers, who live in the community and understand the issues. When I was at Williams, I created the Entrepreneurs Project, which is part of what Teach for the Future does. And we had
Mhm.
all of our young students to set up and own and operate mock businesses on their own, but they were really like legit. And I watch sometimes because this particular class I had them for 2 years, and we did the Entrepreneurs Project, and they had to own and operate a small business, and we use
Mhm.
science boards as our stores, and one of the students won the Young Authors because her business was publishing, and she wrote a book about Kwanzaa, and I always tell her I just have to publish that book. It was just wonderful. It was called The Night Before Kwanzaa. And she won and what several other students in that class are now business. One of them, and
Mhm.
the student that won the best business entrepreneur award for sixth and seventh grader, guess what? She's a fabulous business owner.
Oh, wow.
She is, I watch her on Facebook. I'm just so proud of her. And I told her, I knew it, because she has a wonderful business. She here, but she really does a wonderful job. And
Mhm.
her name is Romika Allen. And I'm gonna try to hook
Okay.
up with them. And then one of my third graders, when I taught third grade, she's also an entrepreneur. And I just get so much joy in watching them
Mhm.
grow, and they're out there and doing
Mhm.
wonderful things. And we had stands. We had one of the girls had jam cookies, Jessica and Melody's cookies, and
Oh,
I mean we were
good.
selling it. But this one
Mhm.
student, she had investors, and her mom invested, and they opened up that's doing really well. So what I'm saying to say that is these are the future business owners of our community, starting them
Absolutely.
7 and 8
Mhm.
and letting them know, look, there
Mhm.
is no other way. You
Very
can
good.
own your business. You don't have to work for anyone unless you want to. So
And
we
see,
want them to
Rosita,
have that option.
Rosita, this is why our schools are so important. Look at what you have so many opportunities and so many ways to touch our children's lives. And you brought entrepreneurship to them. There are so many people that can tell there was a teacher in my life that inspired and sparked an interest in what I'm doing. I'm a speech pathologist, and there was a teacher in a class, a phonetics class,
Mhm.
who talked about speech pathology. I never even thought about being a speech
Yes.
pathologist, but it was the conversation, it was the information, it was the inspiration that I got from that teacher that spiraled me into a lifelong journey, is
Yeah.
what I call it. I
Yes.
retired and I'm
Yeah.
still doing
It's
doing the work.
it's just I mean, I just since I've been in the adult world, I mean, I struggle because I love being with the children so much, because you just get so much bang for your buck. I mean, you just
Absolutely.
watch them grow, and then years
Hmm.
later, you see them, you're like, whoa. I ran into Dollar Tree because when a couple of years ago, right before the pandemic, I ran a program at CVS High School, and I had three boys from the same family. And I mean, we traveled, and I walked in the Dollar Tree, and he just ran over and started hugging me, and everybody's looking like, what's going
Oh,
on? And I was like, where's
sure.
your mom? And mom ran over, and she started.
Mhm.
So this is a thing that what bothers me about CPS, because I tell them I'm a teacher. I did not
Mhm.
get to become a teacher just because I work for CPS. And there's
Mhm.
nothing you're going to do to stop me from teaching in my community. I'm going to fight. And if I want to be in CPS schools, I don't have to be. We're going to do the job. This is our community. This is our children. And unfortunately, we have a group of people who don't look like us. And
Mhm.
they run the show in our community. And
Sure.
they don't care about the people. and they're very disrespectful to our community, but they service our children. And I just said, as long as I can, I'm going to be working on behalf of those beautiful little brown kids, little chocolate kids that sat before me for years, just beautiful. I just love them so much. And,
Mhm, mhm.
we're going to be there fighting for them because they deserve
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely, because teachers, people have gone into the profession because they want to teach our children. And once you get in there, it's more than just a class lesson that is going on. There are life lessons.
Yes.
There are conversations that you have to have. There's consoling that you have to provide. There's dollars coming out of your pocket, you know, above and beyond your salary, that you put on the table because of what you're investing in those children,
And
and that's why our schools are so important.
And you talked about the role of the entrepreneurship, where people,
Mhm,
it's very painful to see everybody drive in our community, set up their stuff, drain the community of all and leave. And that is what they're doing with our teachers. Our teachers no longer
mhm,
live in the community. When I was working, I bought my home in the community that I live in. And I can go down the street to the grocery store and see my student, when I'm shopping, and it's a reunion. I've never ever ran into, and I run into them all the time, and it's a part of the community that we need to fight for those jobs because they're just coming in, getting their dues paid, just slopping up on our kids. We, because of our ability not to really honor what we have, we look at the
right,
people who don't look like us, and for some reason we think they're better, but they're just here to take opportunity away from your children, away from the community. And so we have got, and I'm going to be very with this new mayor because they're partly responsible to CTU for the loss
mhm,
of our 6,000 Black teachers. They fired all the veteran people, teachers at the union. I watched that, and they downsized. And this is what I'm afraid that's going to happen in Chicago. I have a real fear because I saw it happen before with these same people. So when they took over the union, they changed the focus of the union from giving member service to teachers to political and community organizing. Now at
now
that
when did
time,
when,
I
now,
didn't know what that
Rosita,
meant.
when did this start happening? When did you
This
start
in
seeing this change happen?
2010. And
2010.
here's the thing. Sometimes I feel very badly because I actually was the organizer for Karen Lewis in 2009 because I believe we had already lost a 4,500, a little bit to 5,000 Black teachers under the previous two administrations since the late 90s. So
Mm,
we were looking for help. And Karen and CORE, the caucus that just won the mayor, uh, they had their whole platform on Black teachers. And even
mhm,
though they were white liberals, I saw them on the board meeting on TV, and I knew about the mass termination of Black teachers since 2001 and 2 because I was at the first school that closed. So all these
mhm,
years, I'm looking, is anybody going to say anything about this? Not a word about, and this had been going on for like 8 years since 2002. No one was, now I was keeping records, and that's part of my
mhm,
book that I'm trying so hard to publish, but my computer is acting up. But my book is about a documentary from what happened on 2002 onwards. So fast forward, I meet Karen, I meet Core. Well, actually, before I met Core, I went to Reverend Jackson. And
now who is core?
Core, the caucus of
Rosita
rank and
Core.
file educators, they are the people who Brandon Johnson is in this group that ran for mayor. So
Okay,
they're the
so now,
people
now,
that
now,
now
okay, so now,
basically are in charge of the city. So Uh,
Okay, so
they,
let the audience understand, since 2000, because I looked at some statistics, we had like 40.6% of the teachers
mhm,
in the teachers
mm,
in the Chicago public
yes,
schools. 40, like about 40.6% were black
yeah.
teachers were
And,
tenured.
and here's the
Then
thing.
and then down to 2011, we were 28%.
Yeah.
What's the percentage now
About
of
19
tenured
or
black
20.
teachers?
And here
Okay.
is the thing with that, because it's even worse than just those numbers. In the late 90s, Black teachers were 45%. So you're looking
Mhm.
at 2000. But in the late 90s, because we had already lost a boatload of teachers in the late 90s due to reconstitution and stuff, there was a target on Black schools. So when they did reconstitution in the late 90s, we lost a lot of teachers then. And then our FTBs went out, because I don't know if you remember when Reverend Meeks was the education chair, he had said that these teachers couldn't pass a test. And I don't know if you remember that there was a big move. All they can't pass it. And there were newspaper articles about how these teachers couldn't pass the test, the certification test. Well, what happened is a lot of these teachers were teaching kindergarten, first and second grade, and they were being tested on high school math in high school. And when you're teaching, the skill set for teaching kindergarten and primary is totally different. And really, to be honest, you really don't need to know algebra when you're teaching, high school algebra, but that was one of the requirements. And a lot of the teachers who have been teaching primary, they just couldn't pass the test because they've been out of school, and they were phenomenal teachers, but they,
So this is their first level of attack,
right.
is to put the teachers out there, embarrass the teachers, and say that they're not
Right.
qualified.
And that happened when Reverend Meeks came in, and he was really, really hard on the Black teachers. So we lost a lot in the late 90s because of that. And then fast forward to
Well,
when,
why were they doing this?
well, they wanted to purge the system. Reverend Meeks said at Operation Push that he felt that the white teachers and the teachers that taught on the north side were better, and that the teachers on the south and west side, that was his perspective. He felt they were no good. I mean, he said that at Push. He called the teachers the biggest gang in Chicago. So, you know,
And see, my issue with that is, to make a blanket statement like that,
uh,
they were already under resourcing our schools. And then what we had to deal with in our community, the drugs that had been dropped in our communities, that had impacted our children,
right.
that had impacted our families. You know, you he that was very short-sighted on his part, because he wasn't looking at the whole picture.
Yeah, he wasn't, and he wanted the charter schools to be the thing, and they just had such a harsh attack. So a lot of teachers in the thousands had gone out as a result of that. That happened system wide. So
Mhm,
now you can, the size of the union was almost 40,000. So if you're
mhm,
talking about 45% of that, meaning we had about 18,000 Black teachers in the late
mhm,
90s. The union
mhm,
was almost twice the size it is now. So when you could now fast forward to the time you're talking about with the 40%. Well, when we
mhm.
had 40% in, you said 2010 or
That was in 2000.
okay, so 40%, but we were still like about 38,000.
Okay.
So we still had a very nice sizable population of teachers, about 15,000
Mhm,
even then. So we fast forward to 20 when Karen Lewis took over in 2010. And let me back up a little bit because I want to talk about Debbie Lynch, where it all started. So
and she was a union
she
president.
was a union president, and who there were two times that Seniority rights were given up. And what it means is that we had the right. And the union, in order for certain things to happen, the mayors had to convince the union to give back earned rights that the teachers had that protected them. Debbie
Mhm.
Lynch was the first one. Debbie Lynch went to Springfield, which caused a tsunami of schools to close right after that. Teachers had seniority in system wide. So that means if I close a school on the south side, like our school, Williams, then what will happen? All those teachers in that school who have seniority, they can just go up north and bump the person out of the system.
Mhm.
Like
Mhm.
if I don't have a job and you have less seniority, I have your job. Well, in order to
Right.
stop that from happening, they had to go to the union and say, look, we got to get rid of that seniority stuff. We don't want those Southside teachers going bumping our out of their slots. And these were on the north side. So if I
Mhm.
close a school on the south side, I need to make sure that's it for those teachers, that they cannot do that. In order to,
Mhm.
because it was law, so you got to change the law now. So Debbie Lynch went and agreed to get rid of system wide seniority. She agreed. So right after she
Mhm.
did that, Daly closed the first three schools, Williams, Dodge, and Terrell. Why? Because we couldn't go anywhere. And we had to go look for work. Now, what I just found out recently, believe it or
So what
not,
happened to the students when they closed those three schools? What happened to the
oh, they
students?
divvied them out all. Oh, it was the most horrible thing because Williams was in the Dearborn Ickes housing project. So kids that could literally walk across the street and be in the school. The buildings across the street from the school and surrounded. So the school was built for that population. And then the
Mhm.
Ickeys, they could walk maybe a block and be at the school. Well, what happened when they closed the school? They refused to let the children back in. So some of the
Hmm.
children were walking 10 blocks, having to get on buses, walking in the cold. This is when NTA was there. Now, the whole odd thing with NTA is this: the
Now, what is
National Teachers
NTA?
Academy was on
Okay.
22nd Street.
Okay.
Now, they were they were housed inside the basement of Williams for like 3 years. So, what that meant was the whole staff, while they were building NTA, were housed in our school in the basement with no student. But all the teachers who were going to work there were hired, and they would
Mhm.
just be in the basement preparing to open the school. So one day we knew that NTA was going to take some of our students, but we didn't know we were closing. So Mayor Daley had brought, one day he brought a group of Chinese people and he was telling them, uh, you can have this school. And as soon as the brand new school is opening, we tear down the projects and we get rid of those black people. This is your school, 22nd Street,
Hmm.
NTA.
Hmm.
It's supposed to be their school. So we would come to work and like every day, it like this is a big, beautiful picture of Daniel Williams hanging on the wall. Guess what? It's gone, and all of the artifacts and historical things from the African, they were being removed from the school. And we kept saying, what is really going on? They were getting ready to close it and take it. And of course, they don't want any of these schools named after Black people because the school is not named after Daniel Hill Williams anymore. It's Drake or something. They named it something else. So they don't want, they started that. Don't name these schools after Black people, change the name. So anyway, so we go through that. And then after the 100, so by the time I get to 2010, 100 schools like Williams have been closed.
And
Do
they're on the Black community.
every last one in the Black community. So now 100, all in the Black community, South and West Side. But here's the thing, we did not know this until recently. When they closed the school, no matter what great teacher you were, they had a secret do not hire list. So
Hmm.
you, just because you worked at the school, your name went on there. And when you were looking for work, nobody would hire, and you were wondering, what's going on. And a lot of people never got hired back because they didn't know they were on the do not hire list. And
Oh my
and this is how
goodness.
it worked. And I just say, the Black Greeks, the principals, they went and hired their sorors. But if
Mm.
you weren't in a sorority, you didn't have anybody to look out for you, and you probably didn't get a job. The only thing, I was fortunate because I'm not a part of the Black Greek organization, but I
Mm-hmm.
am was a part of the church, and I called my pastor, Bishop Brazier, and he called me, and I'm like, "What is going on? I saw you on the
Mm-hmm.
news. That you're standing there with Daly, and they're firing all of your members. And
Okay.
so I had this long conversation with him, and he called me, and I really think what happened for me, I think he told them to take me off the do not hire list because I was
Mm.
being able to find work.
Okay.
Yeah, so he said take me off, and we it was like, because we wanted to work with these beautiful gifted young Black children, that
Mm-hmm.
they felt we were nothing, and they felt we were bad teachers, no matter how much. I mean, a lot of us, now this, working in the schools, the best teachers are working. Look, I have two gifted children and two who one struggles and one who's above average, but my gifted children, and you're working, you don't have to do any work. They teach you. You don't have to even tell them. I would have to go in and say, put that book down, and go to bed, for them. Because, kids, when they're very gifted and motivated and stuff, though, it's so easy. The hardest job is in the inner city, working with kids who are staying on 2 and 3 and lifting those kids. And that
And
is
see,
what the novel
that's why your
literacy is
black
about.
absolutely, and that's why your black teachers are so important,
Yes.
because you understand, more of where they are, and you're more likely to be able to encourage them, and uplift them, because it's the education, and it's also, like I said, the other things that they bring to the table
Yeah.
that have to be dealt with. And that black teacher is so important. That's why when you hear, I know people who would go, one difference I noticed with people who went to HBCUs that were working at CPS, they were more confident and more likely to excel, and try to move, to higher levels
Mm,
within the ranks
mm.
of the teachers.
Well,
I would see a lot of that
yes, yes,
because of that encouragement that
yes,
they got, those role models that
yes.
they got,
And the
those people who
confidence.
told them, and those people who told them that you have a responsibility to your
Yes.
community.
the-
And so when you to so that's why I say to just look at, they really needed to have taken a closer look at what was really going on, the things that were happening to the curriculum, the lack of resources
Yeah.
that were being taken away.
Hmm.
They weren't looking at all of that. And
No,
then all that you had to deal with. And whatever went wrong, they blamed it on the teacher.
right. And even though, and the teachers and you and I both know they're the hardest working members of the community, but when you have non-educators in charge,
Mhm.
I don't know how that happened.
And
And,
people don't realize the number of hours that you work after school.
and all the money you spend.
That's right.
Yeah, please.
I've been on the computer work trying to do an IEP at 1 o'clock in the morning, and somebody else is on there,
Yeah,
also. They don't realize the amount of work that goes in. And this is really, when I look at our teachers and how the educational system was impacted, so was the business
right.
community impacted. when you brought all of the when the many of the Koreans came into the Chicago area,
Mhm.
and many of the Arabs came into the Chicago area, who did they impact? The black businesses.
Just
You
like,
know, they ran whole industries out of business, and then they came in and totally extracted and gave nothing back.
and that's what's happening with the migrants over in the 20th ward, and they're
Hmm.
over there at Wadsworth, and I heard that there are all kind of strange things going on, and they're being hired and replacing black people. And the black people that were working in the little Chinese stores, they're hiring them now. So they were losing jobs, and now they're
Well, it
trying to
makes
bring
you
them
wonder. It really makes you wonder
from.
because you got now they're going to put some migrants in the South Shore. They're in the hotel over there in Hyde Park. They're in the school over there in
They're in
Woodlawn.
the police
And I
station, and a lot of the
okay, they're in
police.
all these places, and nobody asked the question, why are they bringing these people here?
Well,
And what are they going to do with these people are not just going to sit. These people are coming here for a better life,
and for
and
a
so they're going to
reason.
want homes, they're going to want jobs, they're going to want communities, they're going to want schools for their children. And not to say that they don't, that there's nothing wrong with this, but it should not be at the expense of the black community.
Well, our problem is that almost everyone that's doing this to us is black. So, um,
Mm.
that's our problem because they know what they're doing, and they're getting orders from the people at the top for their livelihood. And this is why we need to start opening up our own businesses because in some of these, I mean, you have to sell the community out. It's required in order for them to move their agenda. They have to have black people that are willing to sell the community out. And this is the problem I had with the Chicago Teachers Union. That's what we were required to do. And I was one of the few people not willing to do it. And so they have an agenda, the white liberals, and they've been successful in convincing our community to go against itself. And so we'll see how that works out for the community. Be-
And see, now everybody is scrambling for teachers. And in many of the schools, you want to say what you have a lot of subs teaching classes. You have
and
a
they're
lot of teachers.
begging. And see, here's the thing: people ask me, what happened to all the other teachers who got displaced? I said they're working because
Yeah,
they got
where
half
are
of a
these teachers?
pension and they can't
Hmm.
retire ever. They have to sub. And these are the veteran teachers with masters and PhDs
Hmm.
subbing for some little, mostly predominantly white or Hispanic child that just started teaching. And then they have to be the sub while these teachers get full salary and full pay. So this is how the dirty game is played. So instead of allowing
So
these
that's
teachers,
where many of our teachers have gone to subbing.
pardon me,
These black teachers. This is where many of our black
the
teachers have gone because
veterans
that
are,
was going
oh,
to
well,
be my
they have no
question.
choice. They have to stay in the system. They have to sub every day. They didn't
Mm,
get a decent pension because CPS put out a memo and told the principals to go after anyone with 17 years or more. You need 34 years for full retirement. So
mhm.
um, if you get the 30 for half of that, you're getting half of your salary, if that, what you were supposed to get. And say if you were supposed to get 5,000 a month, now you got 2,500. So that probably isn't enough for you to retire on. So you have to take, they forced them out and they put them on the do not hire list after they got forced out. So a lot of them can't come back. And then the
So
ones that
what is the
can are
basis for
subbing.
the what is the basis for the do not hire list? How can they justify that?
They can't justify it at all. That's why I filed a federal lawsuit against them. They cannot justify it because, number one, first of all, the list was secret for 20 something years or 30. They, like I said, when schools closed, they put people on the list, but the people didn't know because it was a secret list. And when I worked at the union, Karen Lewis came in one day and told us stop talking about the list because it doesn't exist. Unfortunately, two of her employees, John Kugler and Antoinette Barnes, found the list. They actually found it. So now you can't say the list doesn't exist because we got it. And
Mm,
so when they found the list in March of 2021, then all of a sudden CPS has to disclose there is a list. Now, all these years it's been secret, but and then you can call CPS if you're having trouble, and they will tell you now. But before they said it didn't exist. But after March of 2021, they had to disclose the list,
mhm,
and you can call. And this is what happens: you call and say, "Am I on the list?" They'll check, and then they'll say, "Well, this is what you need to do to get off the list. You have to write a letter, ask to get off the list. Usually, they're not going to let you off." So
mhm,
anyway, that's why we filed a lawsuit. Now here it is. Everybody knows that we have a criminal element, and today even more adults who, for some reason, they want to deal. They're pedophiles, okay, and so
mhm.
we have some of those in our system. We have violent people. We have people that do all kind of things to children, and we want them on that list. We're not defending any criminal, but what we have is a group of people who don't have CPD charges, never been charged with anything, never been charged with anything from DCFS, never their state certificate is valid because it wasn't revoked for doing something bad or any reason, and
Mhm.
they can pass the background check. And what my lawsuit says is if they meet the four criteria, because the CPS lie department, that's what I call them. If they find, there's all kind of things they want you out, and they will fabricate and they will just sit and bold face lie on you. And when the teachers started calling and saying to EEOC, Miss Watka, the EEOC officer, called us and she said, I called CPS and said, why are all these black teachers filing these EEOC charges? What is going on? And of course, these people are not, they're progressive whites, and you know who I'm talking about, but they're progressive whites, and so they are in charge of the law department, in charge of everything under the sun. And so then they came and they told her, we don't care what those black teachers want. If they don't like what we're doing, tell them to sue us. And she said, they
Mm,
said, and we know they can't sue us because they're broke, they're poor, they
mm.
don't have any money, and we just fired them and took their job. Now that
Oh
is
my
what you
goodness.
get at the law department. So in other
That's terrible.
words, we broke the law. We don't have
Mhm.
any reason for firing these people, but you know how it is. You just do something for people, and then this is how they operate. They'll lie on you, and then you don't have money to just go to court. I mean, they could keep you in court for 20 years because they've got all
Right.
the resources, and so you
Mhm.
can't fight back. So when they do this stuff, and everybody that I know that has won pro se because you don't
Okay.
have the money. Joyce Hopkins wrote a book, one of my friends, and she wrote a book called How a Pro Se Won Justice. She paid attorneys $20,000 and $30,000, lost all her money, and she
Mhm.
had to go in and file pro se. I know that paid out like uh 20, 15,000 to an attorney for nothing and had to go
Mhm.
in and represent themselves and file pro se. So they know that you don't have the wherewithal because first of all, they just fired you. You're in survival mode. You don't have 20,000 when me, I had three kids in college. Now I could either
Mhm.
take their college money and pay this attorney that wasn't going to win a case anyway. And I had to make a decision. Do I bring my kids home? Do I pay tuition? So I made the decision to get as many of my kids out of college as I could. And that was a real big hit on me because I couldn't fight back. I
So
didn't
Rosita,
have the money.
okay, so you have lawsuit now
Mhm.
on behalf of teachers on the do not hire
Yeah.
list, but you also had initiated there was a lawsuit earlier that some teachers actually won, right?
Yes. Now that lawsuit was, here we go with that. The Chicago Teachers Union, and this is the second time I tell you,
Hmm.
I'm sorry, but I have absolutely no faith in them because, I've seen what they do. But anyway, they filed a lawsuit, and this is not the first time they won. They filed a lawsuit the first
Now
time.
this was the teachers that lost their jobs.
Yes. Well, several lawsuits they filed because when I met them, in order to get elected, they filed a lawsuit the week before the 2010 election. They on behalf of black teachers because they wanted to get elected. This core caucus, and it worked. If they fooled me, I was excited. They're the only people doing anything. So they filed
Mhm.
this lawsuit and they went into court. And there was a black judge named Judge Core, Coar, not Core like them, but black judge. The attorney, Robin Potter, who handled both lawsuits, but this is the first one. Jackson Potter's mother. Jackson Potter is the vice president of the union. He was the chief of staff for CTU then. And they hired his mother, who wasn't a union attorney and whose law firm was bankrupt. But anyway, she gets the contract to represent the teachers. She doesn't really know what she's doing because she's not a union attorney and she's just the mother of the chief of staff. So she gets this lawsuit and she goes in and we're in court and the judge wanted to give the teachers their jobs back. So he's looking through the lawsuit and he says, "Did you ask for these teachers jobs back?" And she said, "No." And he looked and said,
Mm.
"You didn't ask for the teachers' jobs back?" And she said, "No." And he said, "Why did you file this lawsuit?" And she said, "To preserve future tenure." Now, what in the world does that mean? So, anyway,
Mm.
he just looked at her and he screamed at her and he said, "Shut up and get over there." And we were startled. We were like, "What is going on?" Well, in hindsight, he was saying, "What kind of BS is this? You're going to
Mm.
win this lawsuit, but you're not going to ask for your teachers to return to work?" So the
Mm.
teachers,
Mm.
they won. Nobody got their jobs
Okay.
back. A
Wow.
lawsuit number two is the one you're talking about, filed in 2012.
Now, how much was that first lawsuit for total?
Oh, it was no money and no
Oh,
jobs. It was just they did this to say they won. They didn't get anything but a win. They weren't interested in the
what
teachers
did
coming back to work. They just
so what
wanted a
did they
win to go on record
what
to
did
say that because when I came to work, I said Jackson Potter was there, and he said the teachers were meeting with me at Push, and he said, "Rosita, we won the lawsuit," and I said, "Yes, I'm gonna go tell the teachers," and he said, "No, no," and I said, "What?" And he said, "Well, it's not that kind of lawsuit." So I'm like, "Well, what kind of lawsuit is it? They're not
mhm.
going back to work?" And he said, "No, but we won."
What did they win?
Just to say they won and put it in the paper that they won.
Oh my
That's
goodness.
that's that's how they play the game, honey. So anyway, after that, the second lawsuit comes, filed in 2012. The first judge threw it out, and they lost. Within a year, a new judge comes on. So they filed an appeal, probably someone that these lawyers knew, and they brought it back. So the lawsuit, this was 2012, was settled in 2022, 10 years later. So for the teachers from 2012 to 2014 or 15, some of the 2015 got in. Then now look, these were the teachers for the 50 schools. Remember the 50 schools? Because we already got 100 and they're gone. And the union hasn't said do let's squat about them. So now we have 50. 50 schools closed under Rahm Emanuel. I know everybody
Okay.
knows that because the union, they politicized it because number one, they want to take Ron's job like they took Lori's. So we got to make this a big deal. 50 schools, 50 schools. And I'm like, no, 163 schools. And every
Mm.
time I'm always, no, it was 163 schools that closed, not 50.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
altogether they're 163, not 50. But
Mm. Mm.
because this was a political, the 50 schools were Rom. They everybody thinks 50 schools closed. And so that became the CTU talking point, to emotionalize. Everybody gets emotional. They closed 50 schools. But let me say this. The only reason, let's go back to the seniority. Remember Debbie Lynch gave up sister-wise seniority as soon as she did 100 schools closed. Karen Lewis gave up seniority in economic layoffs. She signed a bill, the bill, as soon as she came in and didn't want to. It was so bad that it wasn't even any sense in paying to be in the union. I mean, the teachers lost everything.
Mm.
They had to work 2 extra hours with no pay. They got the longer school day with no pay. Remember that? They
Yes.
lost their due process rights because they knew that a boatload of teachers were going to be fired in the thousands. Now the union has about 4 or 5 attorneys, and you under the old contract, all of those teachers would have been able to file grievances and get an attorney to represent them in court. All of them.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do that, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna allow the principals to basically fire you on the spot. Get due process anymore because it's illegal. So what I'm gonna do that I say you will not get due process. So if a principal don't like you, and the principals, I would go into schools and they would be telling the teachers, you better do what I say. Your union president said I could fire you on the
Mm.
spot. They had just lost all of their due process right. They couldn't grieve anything, couldn't do anything, it would just go out the door. Now they lost that. They also lost the the reach evaluation they gave them. That was included in Senate Bill. This subjective reach evaluation, which everybody knows wasn't meant to be used as a evaluation tool. It's so subjective. So if you can't pass it, then you're out. So if you're not renewed twice, you get fired. So if a principal, you go to two and she doesn't renew you, and you go somewhere else and they don't renew you, you're terminated. That's part of that. There were so many things in that bill that just ripped everything that Jackie Vaughn had lived and died for. It was gone, honey.
And see,
Completely gutted.
this is what I'm looking at. The fallout
Yes.
of all of this. The fallout of all of this was you busted one of the biggest unions in the country, the Chicago Teachers Union,
Well,
a
you see,
very,
you
very
but you
large, and that's what that was the ultimate goal, was to
yeah.
bust the union.
It was the
And
union
it was
wanted
at
it
the
to
expense,
bust.
and they didn't care anything about the children,
No.
because obviously many of these parents left Chicago. They had to go somewhere because because of the school situation. Education is always an important thing. I don't care how poor the community is or how wealthy the community is. And so many of the people left Chicago. So you're getting black people out of Chicago, and you're busting one of the biggest unions in the country.
And guess what? That was the plan.
Hmm.
Core's plan was to bust the union. When Karen went to Springfield, she just, I mean, there's a video called How to Outfox a Union, and they explain what happened. And Jonah Edelman says he had saved up all this money because he heard about this union president. She's a fighter. He said she came to Springfield and everything I asked her for, she gave it. He said, I was asking for stuff that I knew I couldn't get. And Karen didn't fight. She gave away everything except for the right to strike. The
Mm-hmm.
only thing they kept was the ability to go on strike because they wanted to be able to shut this city down anytime they feel like it. And that is what they did. They were
Mm-hmm.
had the power. And that's they didn't care about any of the other things for the teachers. I, only the right to strike was kept. And so you have to realize what CORE is. Now, people think that CORE is a group of radical Marxist communists and socialists that got together. Most of them are first, second, third, and maybe fourth year teachers. And what, less than five. And what they did was found out that, like Jackson Potter, he worked at Inglewood for a year or two, his school closed, and then he went on sabbatical. He couldn't run as a union president because he didn't even have enough time teaching to run for office. He had to go back when Jesse Sharkey stepped down and go back to school and teach for a year or two just to have enough time as a teacher to run. These are people who are now were in charge of the union. They're community organizers, school clerks, and very they don't want any veteran teachers at the union. Now you know veteran teachers used to, the union was the place people went at the end of their career because they knew a lot and they went there to advocate for teachers. Now the union is someplace for the new young people to come in, and they couldn't give doodly squat about teachers anything. They are political operative. They're there to run politicians. They're there to run their colleagues for office, and they have a very powerful machine, as we just saw in Chicago. And
And
I
so, what is the state of education for our children, our black children? We're getting kind of close to the top of the
yeah
hours. A couple of things, other
yeah
things I want to cover to talk about what's the state of our children's education right now, and then some of the other initiatives that you have on the table.
Well, right now, I don't believe that we can get a quality education within the framework of CPS, especially in our neighborhood schools. And this is why it's important for all of us to begin to develop programs after school, summer school, winter break. And that's what we've been doing. Um,
Hmm.
I ran my program out of CVS High School. And when the schools were off, we were on. We had our kids like full time all summer. We went all over the country. We traveled every 2 weeks. We were on field trips. We were going to museums. We were going to colleges. We were going all over the country. We were going out to dinner. We were going to affairs, events. We were keeping our kids busy. We even went and stayed on campus for a week to get them ready. So, because it's the program generation low income student, and it starts at middle school too. So we
Now, what's the name of your program?
mine at that point is to my non for profit is Teach for the Future, and so we need funding. We're looking for more funding to do those programs in the school
Mhm.
or in our own location because now they've made it so that you can't even work in the schools or anywhere, if you're on a do not hire. A lot of our people on the do not hire list because of things that they've been brought up. Somebody didn't like them, and like I said, most of this is happening is black on black, and then the people in charge are not black, but we're doing it to ourselves. So we work
Mhm.
outside the system, and we still work with our kids. We travel with them, we take them places. We my I that she services about 1,000 children. My works with her, and her daughter works with her. I mean, this is a family affair. So
Mhm.
I have several of my younger siblings. We all educators, one in CPS, two teaching. So we have we work as a family, and we still are able to service over 1,000 children in our family.
Mhm.
But teach for the future,
Okay.
we got to find money so we can expand. So, and we're
So
trying to
how can people support you? How can people
well, we do have a GoFundMe on that you mentioned that, because we do a Juneteenth scholarship every year. I wanted to
Mhm.
give scholarships. It's called Bridging the Gap Scholarship. And so what we
Mhm.
do is try to in honor of just trying to struggle to go to school. A student, I had students that just needed a little bit of help and didn't have money. And when you start college, you don't get your financial aid until possibly 6 to 8 weeks into the semester. So a lot of young people are starting school, but they don't have books. I remember those days. They don't have things, computers, things that they need. So that's what we call it, bridging the gap, because from the
Mhm.
time go register to college, then we give you a scholarship so you can go buy your computer, you can go buy your cameras, you can go buy your books. And I try to give it to as many people, and it's on GoFundMe. So it's Bridging the Gap Scholarship, and we usually try to do it for Juneteenth, because it's a wonderful time to share. So we every year we try to give as many students as
So
possible.
they could go to Bridging the Gap
Yeah, on
GoFundMe
GoFundMe or cause teachers. That
cause
one's
teachers.
under I have two non for profits. One is cause teachers. We do advocacy for teachers, and then I have my curriculum, 501(c)(3), which is Teach for the Future Incorporated. And so
Mhm.
under that, we do grant writing. We just try to bring any kind of monies we can back to the community for the service of our students. And
Okay.
that particular non for profit is completely dedicated to curriculum support, and that's where we have our literacy initiative. Now, I want to explain that is so important. Our black children, we speak a dialect, all black people, of English. None of us speak the standard British English. Standard English, all of our assessments are written in standard English. So, what
Mhm.
happens to an immigrant is you're going to see when they come into the country and they can't speak the language, they get additional language support in English and Spanish. So when they graduate, they are bilingual, speaking two languages fluently. Jaquan over here, he gets no services, even though his English is different from the English that's on the test. He doesn't
Mhm.
speak standard English. He speaks a dialect, and even more so today. Mom may not speak standard English. So when they get the test, it's literally like reading a foreign language. So I
Mhm.
figured that out when I was teaching. And if you stay around long enough, you'll figure things. But like I said, these new teachers, they here 1, 2 years and they're gone. But after you work with the children and you find out they don't really understand the language. And I began to develop, things to help them decoding and explaining this is how we say it in our community, but this is what it means over here. And my test scores just started flying off the roof. I mean, one principal said when she walks in the door, I had gotten so good, the scores just go up. I had
Mhm.
gotten so good. I could take a
Mhm.
student 3 to 4 years in one year with no problem. And all I was doing was just explaining the language. And I
And
said, I mean,
this
this
is,
is a brain surgeon. I mean, I'm explaining to the child what the words mean.
and see, this is why, we need to be a protected class,
Yeah.
because we have a culture. We have a culture, we have a language component to that, to our culture. There is also a language component to our culture. There's so many facets to our culture that's being ignored, and then as a result, we end up getting penalized. We ended up getting overlooked, and it's not empowering for us. And so, identifying what the language part that you're identifying is
Mm-hmm.
is very important to distinguish, to help us distinguish. This is one of the problems we're having with reparations, is being able to distinguish who
Mm-hmm.
we are. And it's like every time we get something on the table, everybody else gets to roll in with it. And so that's why this is so important. And then you're pointing this out,
Mm-hmm.
and how acknowledging this has been impactful as far as helping our children to learn and be
Well,
more
what we
successful
have to
in school.
do, as Pam Henning was saying, we have to look at the legislation. This is what I asked. I have a petition out on change.org for literacy too. And what
Hmm.
I'm asking people to do is go to your legislators and ask them to do a line item, because we don't have to rewrite the script. The bill is written. If you look at the legislation for ESL and ELL, it appears, because they took all of our civil rights legislation to get this done.
Hmm.
So it would include Black children, because in the late 90s, in 1996, out in California, African American Vernacular English was declared a second language.
Hmm.
So in 1998, when this bill was passed, literally, our children should have always been included in that bill, because we did speak another language, and it was legitimately found that African American Vernacular English is a separate language from Standard English. So if we take that in mind and go to the legislators and say, please, add Black children, here's why. Jaquan doesn't get any protection. He's in school. And if he's in seventh grade and he can fail 3 times, he gets no protection. But Pedro over here comes into the country. He can't speak English either. But now he gets classes in English and Spanish. He gets protection under the law that you cannot fail him. And so for 3 years, he's not going to be traumatized by failing 3 times. He's going to be 13. He's going to graduate and go to high school. But that doesn't happen for Jaquan. Jaquan the only way Jaquan's going to get any services is that he has to say he's special ed and get an IEP.
I
So that's the
remember.
whole, mom has to agree. Now, mom doesn't agree to that. He usually will fail 2 or 3 times. He
And
gets no additional support. Now, when he gets ready to go to high school, he's going to be 16. Some of us were 16 when we were seniors. So what does Jaquan do? He drops out. Where does he go? To the street. Now we can stop this, and we can equalize education by just including our children into a program like ESL and ESL, where they would get additional support, where they would also learn Spanish. Because I'm going to say this, every child should be learning Spanish, because
Mhm.
number one, a third of the jobs are for bilingual people. Now our kids are pushed out the market. So we brought the immigrants in, we've empowered them, we make sure that they speak 2 different languages fluently. And Jaquan's over here speaking Ebonics. Okay? So no, we cannot have that. And I ask everyone, please consider this, because this is one of the reasons why they can't compete in the job market, and
Mhm.
that they're on the street shooting. The children are not crazy. When they
Mhm.
go out here, they know they cannot measure up. They know they don't have a chance. They go out here with these other people and they see all the support, the whole
Mhm.
community, and they say, well, nobody helped me.
Well, you
And
know what? I'm
mhm,
going to we're past the top of the hour, but I'm going to end this with and I'm sure I've told this story on our podcast before, but I
uh,
had a student at CVS and he had never been downtown. And he said that he was going to go downtown for the weekend. And I couldn't wait till to see him the next week to find out what his experience was. And I asked him, "Did you go downtown?" He said, "Yes, I did." I said, "Well, what did you think?" He said, "Everybody was so happy." That's
that
what
makes
he said.
you,
And you know, this is, you know,
yeah,
and as you were talking about these schools, I remember, I guess maybe it was back in the 90s when they wouldn't let the children graduate if they didn't have, you know, certain scores. And I was at a school, and the majority of the children that graduated were special ed children. And I
exactly
know that what
protected.
you're saying. That's right. I know that's what you said.
And
So
they're
briefly,
protect.
absolutely. So briefly, tell us again how we can support you and the initiatives that you have on the table.
Okay, our literacy program, petition out on change. I have a page on Facebook, Cause Teachers, CAUSC. I post everything time being my website constructed. It was up and now somebody's doing something with it. But it's teachforthe.com and teachforthefuture.org. And that's with when it comes back up. But I do have an active Facebook page. I have Cause Teachers, which is Coalition and Alliance of Urban School Educators. And that is where we have teachers all over the country who are in cause from different states. So please do that and go on GoFundMe. If you go on my Facebook page, I posted we're starting our scholarship up again this year. We're looking for as many young people that are going to college now. If you're going to
Mhm.
college in the fall and you need a bit of help, we're going to try as we can. So please, people, donate because we don't have funding right now. And I'm going
That's
to
right.
do a fundraiser and I will let everybody know just to raise funds and stuff because we're going to do an event for our college our high school graduates and college graduates for 2022 and 23 because we missed last year. We had some issues, but we have all kind of things to give to the graduate. So we're going to have an event. Stay focused, look for cause teachers, and donate. Please donate to us because our kids need it and they appreciate it so much. When
Okay.
imagine just being able to go to school and buy your books on the first day, buy your
Absolutely.
computer,
Absolutely.
start
That's
out
right.
the
We
right
got
way.
that kind of support when I was going to school. When I was in college, we got
Yeah.
the BOG grants, and that little money, like you said, helped you buy your books and so on and
But
so
see,
forth.
the Bridging the Gap
And
scholarship is before because you have to wait for the Pell Grant. Sometimes
mm,
6 weeks. And by that time, you're lost, if you're
sure.
trying to go to school and you 6 weeks behind.
Okay. Rosita, you are wonderful. You got so much energy, and you are being blessed to take on this challenge because this is a lot of work that you are doing, and you have imparted a lot of information on this show tonight, and I really appreciate you and what you're doing.
And
And
if you Google me, you can see some of the articles I've written. But please be looking for my book. I'm really trying to get it out. I have two books that I'm publishing. One is in the year of 911. It's about Chicago, where we talked about education organizing, and we're
Mhm.
ground zero. It explains everything we talked about. And the other book is called Drinking from the Whites Only Fountain, and it's a book
Okay.
about Black educators and the history and everything that has happened with Brown versus the Board of Education, and just everything we've done in education since 1600.
Well, we will have you back on our show with your books because we are supporters of our Black bookstores here in Chicago. We are great supporters. We do a book giveaway every month, and I will be announcing our book of the month next week. Uh, all you have to do is go to rrgbc.org and subscribe, and you can become eligible to win our book of the month. It's so important that we read. And I hope when you put your books out, Rosita, that some of your books are in some of our Black bookstores. That's very important. Most of our authors are going to Amazon, but we hope that you get some of your books in our Black bookstores. And
And
we want
several
you.
of our cast members have books too, and they're on
Okay.
Amazon.
Okay,
And
so we need to talk to them and find out
yeah,
about that. But
and
and also go to rrgbc.org, and we have a donation page to help us keep this programming going, and the support that we give to our Black businesses for our directory that's coming up of Black businesses. We'll have over 800 Black businesses here in Chicago on our directory. So we need your support. We have to support each other. That's how we're going to make it through this. But Rosita, I want to thank you for coming tonight. It's been a wealth of information, and
well,
wish
thank you.
you
And
all
I
the
want
best.
everybody to celebrate because I'm finishing my doctorate.
Oh
I will be
wow! And hey,
officially
this is
Dr.
this is Black. This is Teachers Appreciation Week, right?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it
All right. So
is.
we can
Yes,
all thank a teacher for something for sure.
yeah, yeah,
All right.
definitely. And to my students, I love you guys. To the teachers, I love you guys. So I just want to say thank you, Pam, for having me on.
All right.
All right.